Yeah, thanks. It's an interesting question, Ben. Let me say, in one of the models that was probably set aside was the purely private sector model. We did a review about, I don't know, half a dozen, maybe 8 years ago, on healthcare investments, private investments in healthcare. And while Africa has 16% of the global population and arguably 25%, I've seen 23 to 25% of the global disease burden, we found that only 1/10 of 1% of private capital invested in health goes to Africa. That's like a huge mismatch. And the reason is because private investors, whether it's CalPERS or any other pension fund, or the bulk of private capital is afraid to do that. The risk return equation is not appropriate for them. The pension funds need to generate significant returns so that they can keep their pensioners in bread and butter for many, many years. And so the pension funds, where a lot of the global capital is housed, simply can't do that. But there are perhaps two entities in the economy that can change that. One is government. Government can invest its own capital or invest its own resources, which is done for some years, into healthcare and into those places where the private capital won't go. The problem is that government doesn't have enough capital to solve the world's problems and shouldn't. And so you come to this potential for government to change the risk return equation for the pension funds or for any other private investors. And that's where we get into this blended finance structures. And so where government, when an investment strategy is super risky, the government might put in a lot of capital or the only capital. As it becomes less risky or perceived to be less risky, the government puts in less capital, but takes on more of the risk than the private sector will. So the CalPERS pension fund, if a government will invest a layer of capital and take on most of the risk, the CalPERS pension fund will add capital as well. And so the structure that Joanne presented there and that I gave her some ideas about isn't the only structure. There can be numerous other structures, but essentially what is required is, I think, both TA and investment capital, and secondly, government capital that can take on more risk to get objectives achieved, and private capital coming in on top or after that. And there are different ways of technically structuring that. This is one way, based on my experience. We've structured in many places around the world funds of funds and funds, and so. But there are definitely other technical ways of structuring. But the principles are important.